Welcome to the Rabia and Sana show. We're two desi girls reinventing cultural norms with love to make difficult conversations easier to help you take courageous steps faster.
Whether you feel like a misfit now or have been breaking the standards, this podcast is for you, for the adults, the young. Come as you be and become your authentic self as you desire. Let's go reinvent some cultural norms together.
Hello everyone, I am Rabia Paracha. I have been a rebel without a cause for most of my life until I discovered my purpose to empower women to empower themselves. And that led me down a rabbit hole to become a life coach from CTI Coactive Coaching. And today I'm a mind and life power coach who helps people break free of their limiting cultural beliefs to find the life they love and the love of their life.
Hello everyone, I am Sana. I am from New Jersey, a Pakistani American. Professionally, I work in the clinical research field. And personally, I have always had this purpose of empowering women of South Asian culture to be able to live the life that they want to live and be true to themselves instead of what the culture expects them to be. And so here I am pursuing that purpose, and I am also studying to become a life coach. Let's get started.
Hi, Sana.
Hi, Rabia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay, given the circumstances.
Exactly. It's a difficult time for all of us with the war, and it was hard for us to come together to do this season finale.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't put out an episode in a while now, and we delayed this one for a few weeks as well, Rabia. And, we were very conflicted in the times that are going on right now with the war and the devastation. And we weren't sure, if this is the right time to release our final finale for the season.
And you and I debated about this, and we decided that the time is right. We talk about some issues that are important and people need the support. There's so many levels of difficult times that we experience. And this episode was Spill the Chai.
It is a very, very interesting episode. We had some of our guests back, and when we recorded this, we did not know the situation that will be happening around the world right now. But, the message that you and I are giving out in this episode, along in all of our other episodes, might even be in these difficult times, might even make a change for some people still, because the message is still of pure love and peace. Some of the things that we even talk about in this episode, right, are about that.
Right. The climate that we're going through right now is a clash between reinventing norms and following old ways. And it's an ideal time for us to reinvent cultural norms, talking about humanity, talking about our human rights. This is our way of bringing that voice about these things. What we talk about is very small to what's happening in the world right now. But at the same time, everyone's important. So I think it's needed for us to do this and keep going and doing our mission, but then adding the bigger mission, like you're saying, about love, peace, humanity.
We're spilling the chai, and that's what we're calling it, Spill the Chai. Please, guys, listen to this one. We've put together a really great episode for you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Rabia. Hi, Sana.
Hi, Huseyin.
Thank you so much for popping in. This episode is Spill the Chai, which is spill the tea. But today, the main reason is that we want to say things that we normally don't say. So saying all the things that we think about, but sometimes don't actually say. So we want it to be a little controversial.
Okay.
Add some controversy to our episode, please.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing really comes to mind, to be honest. Like, I don't normally sort of hold back on anything that I want to say anyway. So I normally sort of say whatever's on my mind. So I don't really know if there's anything else I would add or that I held back from saying, like, necessarily.
Fair enough. And that's great. So Sana and I were talking. It's not always pretty and nice and respectful, right? Sometimes when you're calling out certain things, especially being women from our culture, there's so much that we've done to be where we are, but then there's so much more that needs to be done to have that equity. This word is really playing a role in our lives right now. The respect isn't equal. A woman's responsibilities are so much more, even when she works and earns a living. So we just want that equity in our culture and for all. So that's sort of why we we were talking about spilling the chai.
It's completely understandable, Ravi, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Like you're supposed to be seen but not be heard, or you can't say exactly what's on your mind. You have to sort of be really careful. You have to bite your tongue on a lot of occasions, and so I think it's good that you be able to speak your mind and say whatever you feel like saying. I think it's long overdue, to be honest.
So the funny part is I've always stood up, but before I knew what I know today, assertiveness was considered disrespectful.
Yeah.
To speak up for yourself was considered disrespectful because you're challenging the norms. That was back then. I felt so bad about speaking up. And now I'm like, oh my God, I was onto something.
Yeah, I think it's important, I think it's important that everybody has a voice and everyone can sort of say what they want to say. And I think sometimes political correctness goes too far as well, we're so worried about hurting other people's feelings and that kind of things. And sometimes you just need to say what you want to say, and not worry too much about hurting someone's feelings. I think there's a possibility of people being oversensitive, too sensitive to what's being said, and I think there's definitely benefits to being more edgy and just being honest and saying whatever you feel like saying.
Yeah, it's just being yourself. If you're able to speak your mind, you're able to be yourself. You're not able to feel something else on the inside, say something else on the inside because somebody's going to get offended or somebody's not going to like it. And then that goes into the whole dual personality and not being yourself thing and faking it, So that's how I had to do it in my entire life. Fake it to
just agreeing with what you and Sana are saying.
So what would you say to someone in our shoes? And your episode was all about awakening to a deeper love, and when we're struggling with this duality of pleasing society and being politically correct and so overly compassionate or overly understanding of others, and then putting ourselves kind of on the back burner and not fully being able to express ourselves. What advice could you give to somebody to open up and awaken to a deeper love when they're in that situation?
I think it's absolutely essential to be authentic and true to yourself before taking into consideration how you might come across and even worrying about how you're perceived by other people. I think that's not the first consideration at all. I think it's much more important to be authentic and to be true to yourself and speak your mind. I think it's absolutely fundamental. Definitely.
I was thinking about when we're not true to ourselves, it's almost like self-betrayal.
Yeah, it is. There's no point hiding. If it's just you have to be yourself. Life's too short to sort of hide behind the curtain and just people please or be the way other people expect you to be. I think it's fundamental to sort of break free from other people's expectations of how you should be and just be yourself. And I think a lot of us maybe live our entire lifetimes hiding, and not able to break free from the expectation that other people have of us. And I think it's fundamental to actually being the best possible version of yourself. It's definitely an important part of.
Mm-hmm. For sure, being able to be fully expressed is so important. I think that mental health, the way the numbers that we are seeing rising in spite of all the advancements that we have. I think this is a huge role of not being able to be yourself and express yourself. And I think emotional regulation, which is perfect because we're coming into a topic that Michelle, so happy to see you and have you here, the grief curator, which is what Michelle is.
Hello.
Would you like to chime into what you're going to spill the chai on about grief, and what do you think something on grief could be shared that possibly hasn't been shared?
Well, yes, I can spill any chai you like. Just ask me a question.
I want to know your thoughts on what we were talking about the equity for gender roles, for women and men. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, give me a little bit more context in terms of, do I think that there is equity now with gender roles? I would definitely say there is more so now in the time that we are living in than obviously even just 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and definitely 50 years ago. So yeah, there definitely is. There's still more work to be done, obviously, especially in many other countries. I mean, here in the United States, we definitely have made great strides, and other countries are a little bit more behind. So yeah, just really, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of that. I agree.
One thing I really loved seeing this year is at the US Open that the champions received the same amount in their reward. Billie Jean King has done a lot of work for a lot of years to make that happen. in the US, the parts of the world that Sana and I are from, we're 30 to 40 years behind of where things are evolving to here in the US and Canada, which is where I'm at. But if we look at Pakistan and India, what we're seeing there is a rebellion from women, and whatever injustices happen to them, they are now on the flip side doing it to the men. So it's almost like this revenge state. And I think for me, I can't justify that. If it's wrong to have that done to you, it's wrong for you to do it to someone else. And that disrespect now has just become totally opposite. Mm-hmm. And I think that for me is of great concern.
I think one thing we have to remember is that throughout human history, this just happens. This is a normal part of evolution, both as a species, but also just individually, because, the cliche is very true. You cannot change other people. You can only change yourself. And as human beings, we tend to go to the extremes sometimes until we can settle in and figure out, okay, what is it that I want? Who is it that I am? What are my boundaries? What are healthy boundaries? So it's quite normal for a society to swing very much in the opposite direction. We just see this throughout history, and it doesn't matter what culture it is. All cultures and societies go through this. And unfortunately, this is kind of the growing pains, of being like, look, I've been putting up with this, whatever it is, and now I'm going to stand up for myself. And so you go hard in the other direction, usually too much. And then as you start to heal yourself, then you realize, oh, okay, here is where I need to be, because the middle, the mean is that's where it's at, because you have to have harmony. You have to have balance. I see this so often in other countries where feminism specifically is seen as something terrible, as something bad. And just looking from the outside and seeing these other countries and cultures go through these growing pains, I just want to tell them, like, okay, here's the bottom line. There are always going to be factions within a movement that, again, are going to go hard in the opposite direction because of pain. And you hit the nail on the head there. Because of pain. I am in pain. You have hurt me continuously. I'm not taking it anymore. And now I'm angry, because, anger is part of grief. One of my favorite phrases, and I don't know who coined this, but it's so true. I sat with my anger long enough to recognize her name was grief. Because when you've been under oppression, when you, there's everything. You've been under personal repression, maybe in your family of origin, in your current relationship, in your friendships, at work, whatever it is. And then as a member of a society, you have been under oppression. This happens with different groups, with women, with minorities. And that is very real. That is very valid. And the anger that you feel is tied so closely to grief, because as human beings, just base human beings, no matter who we are, where we were born, what our traditions are, we all want to be loved. And that means we want to be known and seen and heard. And I truly believe that we are all meant for something great. And I don't mean great in terms of like saving the world, pulling people out of a fire. We tend to think in those big terms, when actually the most heroic thing we can do is to become self-aware. It's so difficult and so painful, which is why a lot of people don't do it, because you have to look at yourself, and you have to both hold yourself accountable for your reaction, for your feeling, but you also have to give yourself grace and forgive yourself and truly love yourself. And that is a process that takes time. So imagine if that takes time for one individual, how much time does that take for an entire society where everyone is not healing at the same rate, and not everybody has access to tools of healing that the rest of the society does. So yeah, I see that, and everything in its time, I know, and that can be difficult, but I totally agree with you. Bottom line, yes, we can often go hard in the opposite direction. That's what societies do too. And that's how we continuously grow as human beings. We sometimes regress a little bit, and go back to that, I need to figure out who I am. and what my beliefs are, and again, what my healthy boundaries are. And that can be so different. So back to you.
Amazing. I love the way you just took us on this journey. I completely agree. To be seen and heard and known, you've got to make some noise. If you don't make noise, you're going to be just where you were before. So that is essential. And I think that that uproar is so needed. Any change requires an uproar. I completely agree. I've done it personally in my life to feel seen and heard. I, made noise, complained, rebelled, objected, was not the most graceful. It wasn't a graceful journey because we stumble, we fall, we say things, and then we sort of regret saying it, and then we try to figure out how to say it better. The key word you used, self-aware, that this journey isn't so linear and it isn't perfect and graceful and pretty, and we don't know ourselves because we think we know ourselves from what we know about ourselves, but there's so much about ourselves that we don't know. And these traumas and these events that happen in our lives, they fragment us, and they happen to us to gain that self-awareness, but we feel angry, bitter, resentful, and contempt, and all these nasty emotions. And we've never been taught to process these emotions and that they're natural and healthy emotions. But because we haven't been taught to recognize them as healthy and good for us, we then don't know how to process these emotions or how to handle them. And I was so nasty. I used to be a bitch with a capital B because I was so angry and so resentful. And when I say this to people today, they say, no, not you. But I was so nasty. And when I would go into stores and I would, people would be like, you should smile sometimes. Life isn't that bad. And I never knew I was not smiling. So it just ate away at me. And I think that the word you brought up, grief, is something that has never been spoken about in my journey until very recently. It's that loss that we experienced in each of those events. It doesn't have to be just a death. And about 3 or 4 years back, I actually did a workshop on audacious self-acceptance. And grief has to be processed for us to really accept ourselves and forgive ourselves, like you also added. So I love that. That became the rebel, and I would do crazy things. Mm-hmm. And my mom would be like, did you do this? And did you do that? And I would be sort of very abrasive because I didn't know how to be gentle with myself. And it was almost like I was in this contradicting, society where one part of me believes that what I want and what I'm doing is good and healthy, but another part is there was so much shame, like two polar opposite beliefs running inside me, and I'm conflicted, and that confusion and confliction was causing all the drama, and there was a lot of drama.
Yeah.
And so for me, I hate right and wrong. I hate good and bad. I just like healthy and unhealthy. How is it serving me? What does it bring to my life? And how do we know ourselves? I see that we have 3 parallel journeys, right? We have the one with ourselves where the self-awareness is birth. We have the one with each other that causes all the fragmentations within us. So we have to go back to that first journey. And then the third one, which looking after the neighbors, looking after all the Khans and the Pirachas and the whole universe, except the person by name. It was so difficult to know myself because I wasn't a part of any equation. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, at the end of the day, no matter what culture or country you're from, the human experience, why we are here is to become, I believe, that kind of that self-actualization where you do get to that point where it's both and. It's not either or. It's I am an individual and I am interdependent. Interdependence is the healthiest way to be. Too independent and too dependent or codependent, that's unhealthy. And I am interdependent and I am me and I have my own thoughts and I have my own desires and I have my own strengths and weaknesses. And I'm also part of the whole because we were not built for isolation. we were meant to be in a community. And never is that more apparent than when you are experiencing loss. And like you said at the beginning, and that pertains to all types of loss, especially when somebody dies, but all types of loss. When you are feeling that loss and that grief, that's when the community is supposed to step in and hold that space for you. And I mean, I talk a lot about holding space for yourself as well. That's very healthy. But we aren't islands. We aren't meant to be alone going through this type of thing. And the other thing I wanted to bring up as well is the other like obstacle is that now, of course, we know not only are we dealing with our own immediate trauma, we also inherit trauma.
Yes.
Back, I think, at least 7 generations. Not just inherit it here, but in our very DNA. Like it affects our DNA strand.
Mm.
So some things that we feel or that we encounter or that we experience is actually not ours, individually ours. It's great, 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 great grand because she was raped or she went through war or whatever it was. And that altered her DNA so that when she had a child, it's more so I think in women because we have both chromosomes. It gets passed down and that DNA is altered. And it's a fascinating study. But also like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Really? I don't just deal with my own shit. I've got to now deal with generational trauma too. Thanks. Thank you so much. But yeah. And when you said that your parents had your best interest, I'm going to challenge that a little bit. I'm going to say, I'm sure they love you and wanted the best for you. But at the end of the day, only you know that because you are individual. You aren't a carbon copy of them. You aren't them. You are you. And that journey is yours.
I absolutely agree. They meant well. They didn't mean for things to turn out the way they did, which is what I meant. They did the best they could with what they had at that moment. Well, I got engaged at 13. At that time, they were my guardian. They were the adults that were to make decisions for me. I do believe, fast forward to today, I do believe that everything, all the pieces that they considered were the most important pieces. They just left out what you said is, did they know you when they were matching your partner with you? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with arranged marriages as long as we match people, goals, personalities, lifestyles, all of these habits, hobbies, all of these things are so important to know. He was my first cousin as well, which is another cultural norm. We couldn't be more similar.
This reminds me, Rabia, on our episode about no one is coming to save you. And you said the same sentence and it hit home for me and it made such a difference for me was no one knows where you are going. No one knows what you are thinking. No one knows what you're feeling. No one knows you. No one knows what is best for you as much as you know.
But also they don't know. Did they ask? That's the thing. So many people just don't ask. I will say this. I also think that, arranged marriages is kind of like, as an American, is like, well, I don't do. But I can see how it. I mean, in the West, there was some arranged marriages too, like in the upper aristocracy. But that my issue is more at 13. No, I don't agree with that. And in this case, I'm like, I don't care what culture it is. There are some things that are just universally wrong because, the human brain doesn't finish developing until 26, which is crazy. I just learned that within like the last couple of years. And I just thought I was like, oh, really? Wow. That's amazing because we evolve so much and we change so much between our teenage years and then in our 20s. And what you liked at 13 is not what you are going to like at 26. So, but I love that you said that, it's really taking into account, like, yes, go ahead and arrange it, but talk to me, ask me what I'm feeling, what I want, what my dreams are. Take that into account because,
they base it on, does the finances, would the families get along? Where does he live? Those are the things that
those are good, but they're not everything. Yeah.
I think this is a problem in our culture as a whole, and I'm going to spill the chai on this, is that we base connections on resumes. It's like marriage is a job application.
Yeah.
It's a resume. does he have a good education? Did he go to Ivy League, or did he just go to a regular university? And it's the status as well. Is he from a good family by name? Because all the good families by names have a lot of skeletons in their closets that are even respected despite that.
It's matchmaking. If you think about it, it's actually matchmaking, but they do it so bad.
How much does he make?
That comes from a well-intentioned place. We want you to be comfortable. We want you to be taken care of. We don't want you to have to, like, whatever it is. That's great, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen, because sometimes the man controls. I mean, especially if he's a narcissist, like specifically narcissistic personality disorder, he's going to control the finances anyway, and you never see a penny. So yeah, it's comes well intentioned, but for me, like, and we talk about this, here in the United States, that I want a man. He doesn't have to have a specific degree level, because I know a lot of people who went to a university and are absolutely stupid. So it means nothing. But and it doesn't matter, like, does he need to have a certain level job? No, but he needs to be hardworking. That's important. Yeah. So it comes from a well-intentioned place, but it can't be everything.
And I think that it's so important to know personality. Is he ambitious? What I find attractive is ambition and a go-getter that, I know I'm going to take care of my family. And I like that attitude. I don't think there's anything wrong with a man having this attitude of, I'm going to take care of my family. I think that's a great attitude. Generosity, it sort of falls into another important characteristic, which I so value and I actually admire in qualities in everyone: wanting to provide, wanting to make people feel safe and protected. But then it can also go into this quality, what you're talking about, control. And so there are fine lines with this. And I think narcissism, what you're talking about, I think there's a lot of it in our culture. The control aspect, everyone has forgotten the love aspect of the community aspect, the collectivism, like at the core of why we do this. Everyone's forgotten that. Now it's about, let's control the women, let's control the kids, because it's self-serving.
I think collectivism cannot work if we are not whole within ourselves. Like, if we are not able to be independent and emotionally stable just by ourselves, the collectivism will fail too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And our society has kind of collectively become narcissistic. We're very, and I really been just thinking about this, noodling on it, like meditating on it. My background's actually in history, and I've just been trying to think, okay, well, every era has its challenges. There is no such thing as the good old days, because no matter which time you pick, there are going to be people who are not having a good old time. They were oppressed, they were enslaved, whatever it is. So what does that even mean? At the same time, I really want to delve more into this just on my own, like, because I was thinking, is it modern society? Does modern society, the way that we operate, how dependent we are on technology, and because this truly is the best time in terms of physical work for women to be as interdependent as we can be, because we have the ability to do certain things that 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we definitely needed somebody physically stronger to do certain things, because we just couldn't, and there was no machines around to do them. So I want to tear out my hair, kind of that anger part, where when I hear men, especially since we're talking about this, say that, oh, well, you wanted to be treated equally. And I'm like, we always wanted to be treated equally. Again, there are certain factions that are like, there is no difference. I'm going to be like, well, no, there is a difference. I recognize that. When I say that I want a traditional relationship, what I mean is I want you to know yourself as well as a man. I want you to take the lead on certain things, but also to give way to me when it's something that I have a strength in. It's not a competition. It's not a job. But when you were saying about the resume part, it's what you said. It's about love. It's about give and take. It is not those types of relationship. Well, any type of intimate relationship is not transactional. It should not be transactional. It is a cooperation. And all I'm asking is that you respect me as a human being, and you know me, and I'll get to know you. And that there's this give and take, this push and pull that's just natural. And don't try to control things. I often wonder, and this is a both a strength and a weakness at the same time. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt in terms of, well, maybe they had a terrible childhood. What is really underneath this behavior? Is it grief? Is it fear? Like, I'm afraid you're going to leave me type of thing. Like, even narcissists. And I will say narcissistic personality disorder itself is one of the most difficult disorders to treat because they are so well protected, their ego, because at some point, one of two things happened. Their ego was almost destroyed, like there was some really big trauma. And so that they've built this shell that almost no one can get around. Or sometimes it's they grew up where one of the parents just like put them, you're a god. And they just are like, the world revolves around me.
God syndrome. Yes.
Yeah. And you must do what I say, type of thing. So yeah, it's
complex and complicated. When you were speaking, it reminded me of a few of our episodes. One was, how do you know when to break free or when to reinvent cultural norms, right? Because they're traditions, they're passed on. These traditions, in many ways, like the traumas, are in our DNA. I think belief systems are a part of our DNA because they're not visible. They may as well be a part of our emotional DNA. And the second thing was breaking free. So knowing when to reinvent cultural norms and then actually taking the action to break free from them. They're two separate acts.
Yeah. And sometimes we can do the one, and if we don't do this next part of actually taking that action and breaking free, then we'll still be stuck in that cycle.
We'll be suffering for the rest of our lives.
Right. And I think the biggest question you have to ask of any type of cultural tradition or whatever is, does this benefit everyone? Does it only benefit a very small number? And does it harm anyone? We like to say, nobody is free until everyone is free type of thing. And it's kind of like that. I don't know that we will ever get to that point. At least we should try to love one another as much as we can and to cause harm to no.
Absolutely. One of our episodes was understanding our inner culture. There's an outer culture and then there's an inner culture. Understanding our inner culture is so important. How can I love anyone if I'm constantly at odds with myself, constantly buying into a lot of crap, making it my personal truth when in fact it's the total opposite from what I believe and what I want and who I am? And for me, there was this it was like my whole world shattered in 2012. Like my entire world shattered. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. In the moment, it was painful and hard. Mm-hmm. Let me just be very honest. Because of some decisions I made to change the culture that I live in or the culture around me, it's been really difficult because I had to say no to the resume. I had to leave a job. I had to leave my family. I was left by my children. I had to become alone, but I was no longer lonely because when I started connecting with myself, I did not feel lonely. The reason I felt lonely was I didn't know myself. And I don't think change begins from the inside out. I think it begins from the outside in. It's the events that happen to us that trigger that change. So change, we always hear, happens from the inside out. You have to change yourself. I went to all these meetings in Toronto when I say my life broke me whole, because when I started going to these meetings and what I hated hearing, I understand the importance of changing oneself or becoming oneself. I'd rather say becoming oneself. I hated hearing, you know what? I know that you were abused. I know this happened. Go fix yourself. That's what I heard. Meaning you need to fix yourself in order to change the world. There was a dismissal. I was being dismissed already. And I heard this from experts in the field. So back then, everyone said, oh, the law of attraction. If you want to attract something, you've got to become it. So there's something wrong with you. And so I'm like, what the hell? Everyone wants me to fix myself, including the problems, the people that, I'm trying to get away from. They said, fix yourself, because everyone says you're the common denominator in your life. So if there's something wrong in your life, you must be the reason. I really want to spill chai, like a whole pot of tea on that, because why do we always say go fix yourself? Yes, we need to modify ourselves to become whole. We need to understand ourselves, have that self-awareness. But it doesn't mean we can't call out people on their wrong or justify them or not even consider them in the equation of change. That was my beef. And I don't want anyone to hear from me, go fix yourself, go change yourself, go become better. I want them to know that wherever they are is absolutely okay. And what happened was absolutely wrong.
It's that both and. At the end of the day, it was an outside factor that was kind of the trigger action, like you said. And it's both and no, first of all, I just want to say, and I just want to hold space for you from back then, that was terrible thing to say to you while you were in such pain. I mean, well, anytime it's terrible to say that to somebody, but especially when you were so vulnerable and in so need of community support, of somebody to be like, I'm holding space for you. What happened to you was absolutely terrible and it wasn't okay. And how you're feeling right now, that is okay. Yeah, I just want to hold space for that.
Thank you. And I had to hold space for myself because I said the one thing that I'm not going to do is repeat what I've been told. There has to be another way. So I kept going in my journey because in that time it was like you reframe everything. I think the reframe is great, but you have to know where in this emotional journey you are. And when you have processed all those emotions, the reframe is inevitable. It will happen. But you've got to go through all of those feelings, feeling of, guilt, shame, worry, aloneness. Like there's loneliness, but there's also aloneness. I was deserted by the very people, from my boyfriend to my family, that said, you're on your own, kid. You got yourself into this, you get yourself out. Honestly, that was the best thing that ever happened because I became self-reliant. Whereas before, as a woman from the South Asian culture, you're dependent. And I love the interdependent because I can't do everything. I can't put so much stress and pressure on myself to be superwoman, to be able to do this, that, and everything else. And I'd become the most powerful person in the world because I was scapegoated, where I was responsible for everything. And I would think I must be really powerful.
That was a lie that was told us. You can have it all, which means you must do it all and you must balance it all. That whole thing of you have to be nurturing, you have to be sexy, you have to be this, but not too much this, and you have to be that, and all this. It's bullshit because we're so stressed because of that. Hello. So yeah, I'm so, in that sense, I guess I'm glad that it happened for you. That's, I mean, sometimes that's what it takes, which is unfortunate, but I'm so glad that you were able to take that and mold it into something beautiful for yourself.
I want to spill the chai one on the superwoman comment. I hate it. Oh my God, that's also with something in our culture that's been so annoying. It's like, yes, you are the superwoman, but at the same time, we're not heard. We have to be the superwoman, but nobody actually acknowledges our feelings. Nobody is there to actually understand or say, yeah, I hear you, or like what you are feeling right now, or it's just like go be a superwoman. You can do it because you're a woman and you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Hello, Vineeta. Hello, superwoman.
Listen, I totally hear you, but I know I'm jumping in the middle of the conversation, but this is where we really get to transmute some of this languaging and all the things attached to it. Because when you say superwoman, I literally went to I got my cape on, my wings are out, like I'm ready to go. So I'm like warrior mode is what came to me. I was like, all those old things, gone, done. I'm not attaching to that anymore. But I totally understand, you know what I mean? So I think we get to create that experience. It's like we can either choose to hold on to those pieces or say, how am I going to embrace it now? So that's what I'm choosing.
I love that.
The other thing I want to call bullshit on in the desi culture, sorry, we're spilling the chai, is that why are they so resistant to change? It's so much like throughout life, mankind has evolved. It's evolution. It's supposed to happen like that. But the resistance to change, like, no, we have to do it this way because it was done this way for years, or the way our parents did it, we got to do it. I hate that resistance to change. Like, let us evolve, change it. It's okay. Times have changed. Things have moved on. It's okay if arranged marriages don't happen anymore. It's okay if we start to get divorces, and we can maybe look at other cultures and become interculturalism and understand each other. Like, gosh, why can't we change?
Oh my goodness, that is such a big thing. My experience and understanding is all about people who want to be in control, right? So that is the only way to do it, is you have to keep wanting to be in that place of power and have the control to be able to tell other people how and what to do. And in the past, a lot of times it has been the masculine that has done that, right? And so they get to like hold that power, and they don't want to release it because things are changing and very dramatically changing, right? But they're holding on for dear life. But I truly believe things are crumbling. Just to give an example, someone who grew up in India, she's gay. And there was, you can't even imagine, like, I don't even know what her life has been like, but I can't even imagine her journey in the environment and how she's managed to like make it and do things. But, she basically in India decided to sort of be like, hey, this is my partner, and we are going to have a ceremony to let everyone know that we are together. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
This is happening in India. What is happening? So I don't even think that she understands. I'm getting chills. It's like, holy smokes, you are shattering so many paradigms right now, but this is exactly what it is. And sometimes it is the younger people that are bold enough to just be like, hey, I am not buying into this system. I'm creating the new. So I think it's happening. It's definitely happening, Sana. So, but I totally get where you're coming from.
Love that.
Wow, it takes a lot of balls to say that this is who I am. This is not about you anymore. It's my life, my body, my life. I get to choose. I think this world is coming to that. And the resistance isn't coming from the new generations. It's coming from the older generation.
Yeah.
That's it. And the new kids are like, we don't have all these old stories, all this old karma. I don't know, whatever you people are replaying and redoing. So to me, it's also having the courage to do that in a system that doesn't support it. And I know I'm being very specific about, but this is even a bigger thing in our culture here in the US and other places. Things are so much more open and all of those things. But like in our countries, like Pakistan and like in India, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is, even if you're comfortable being who you are, to have a ceremony that like
Wow.
publicly and
Would there still be a danger that somebody would retaliate?
yeah, I think so. And to push through that and do it anyways. I'm sure she had a lot of fear, but she did it anyway.
You remind me of a couple of things. One is my first experience of homosexuality, not personal experience, but seeing it, was in Pakistan. There's a restaurant in Karachi called Barbecue Tonight. It's really good. And I saw two men making out on the street. Growing up in North America, where there were people coming out, Rock Hudson and George Michael and Freddie Mercury, they were all coming out in that time when I was growing up. But I never saw it here. I saw it when I went to a country where it's absolutely forbidden.
I remember very distinctly in India, like men holding hands, but I never really thought much about it. But I just thought, I was like, oh, I never see that anywhere else. Now, again, at that time, it was just a cultural thing. I don't think it meant that, hey, we're like a couple. It was just like a normal thing. And it's funny because I would see more men doing that than women, but it was very like two men holding hands, but I would see it everywhere. So I never really thought anything of it. I'm just like, hey, it's just like a cultural thing. But I think to me, there is this, of course, this whole class separation, right? Where you have the money, the power, you can do whatever the heck you want. But I think especially in our cultures, right? I can only speak for the Indian culture, that you can't be different. The whole point is, do not be different. You need to be like everybody else. And if you're different, then just be quiet about it. Do not say anything. You can be on the down low, hide, do not share anything. And so for me, I think that's the part that's so hard because, you do have compassion, right? Like we think we've got problems and everybody's got problems, but you're like, wow, to never be able to be yourself. Never, right? And it's only now that people are coming out, but they probably like lived half their life in this space of not being able to speak their truth. And think about it, how many of them were probably forced to get into marriages. It's just so sad.
To point you brought up, Michelle, is who is it hurting? Who is being harmed in this? There are so many marriages that I have heard stories about, these arranged marriages where the girl is coming from Pakistan to Canada, or the guy is coming from Pakistan to Canada, or from India to Canada, or the US, where they didn't consummate their weddings because they were having relationships with other people. They couldn't say no to their family members. Others were gay, and they could not stand up about their identity of who they were as people to their families, and how many lives get ruined because of it. That's my problem. It's twofold. The society makes it difficult to have these conversations, but then we can't stand up for ourselves.
And I just want to say that for those people, it's okay that you couldn't stand up for yourself, because that takes a whole lot of courage and just a willingness to be open to whatever may happen.
Consequences.
And sometimes you're just not ready. You're just not in that space.
Courage is definitely a key word here. And this whole process of coming into ourselves and really owning ourselves, and then being able to stand up for ourselves. Like, it's a 3-tier process, in my opinion. But where my heart goes out is to those innocent lives that get impacted. One of the reasons why Sana and I have this podcast is to prevent that collateral damage. There are consequences to everything. I'm living proof of consequences, right? I didn't have the courage to say no to my parents at the age of 13. I had 6 years before I got married. I didn't find the courage at 19 to say no because my father was dying of cancer. How can I say no to this? It's his last wish to see his daughter married before he dies. He had been given 3 months to live, and he survived a year. You don't know what life is going to deal you, the cards that you're going to be dealt. And then at 29, I'm in this marriage that I'm not happy in because I don't know myself. I've given up my dreams. I was in grief from the loss of my father, from the loss of my childhood dreams. And so rebellion was my best friend. Let me make everyone's life really difficult.
It's so powerful what you're sharing, right, Rabia? And, I have somebody in my, it was a semi-arranged marriage. And, many years later, she took her own life. And it's really interesting because I'm like, what happened? And one of the things that I heard was that he was probably gay. And so she basically got stuck in a marriage where she had no option. She couldn't go home because what would society think? And you must have done this. You must have done this because blah, blah, blah. So just, I'm sharing that to say that it's so complex, right? Like these things that happen and the impact, like you were saying, right, Rabia, like the impact, like this beautiful child who, has done all these things. She's smart. She gets married. She's ready to start her life. And she steps into this unknown and her whole life is shifted to a point where she had imagine that was her only option. Her only option was to take her life. And now the ripple effect of that, it's just crazy. Even though I know we all have the higher perspective that we've chosen these really intense experiences, right? To learn things and work through things, but we're still human. Like just the understanding of how, especially in our cultures, like there's so many things that really disempower us to a level where we are just, I can't even imagine the mental and emotional turmoil and pain and angst, and to feel that you can't say anything to anybody because no one's going to understand and you are going to get no support.
You're bringing up another point that I want to bring up and spill the chai on, is that why is the woman responsible for everything that goes wrong? Why do we shame the woman in our culture? Why do we protect the wrongdoers in our culture.
But it's created, right? That system is created, Rabia. Again, I'm going to go back to the masculine. They created what was convenient for them, and they made sure that that got pushed out so that they can stay in control and basically keep us in a more suppressed kind of space. And one of the things that was coming to me was, in Calcutta, which is like one of the areas in India, there, once the husband dies for whatever reason, not only, I mean, forget that she's a widow, they actually ship them off to an island type place. They shave their heads. They're made to wear only white clothing. They literally are treated like untouchables, and they all have to live together in the most crazy situation. This is a thing. And they're literally what did they do? The husband died. Oh, it's your fault that he died.
Wow.
I mean, can you even imagine? And there was a movie that they made that I got to watch. I mean, they couldn't even show this movie like on the regular like theaters because
I've seen that movie.
Controversial. But it was so like, I mean, my heart was bleeding. I know this is not the only place that does it, but it was just so sad. And it totally ties into what you're saying, like Rabia, right? Like they just decided that this is how it's going to be, and everyone's just participating. And I'm thinking, how could women create, do these crimes against other women? You've got to like do something.
I was
supporting.
Did no one say, pardon my French, fuck that, I'm not going to that island, I'm gonna go away, I'm moving somewhere else? Did not one of them?
But Michelle, you're kind of expressing it like they have options. Once you are supposed to be completely reliant and dependent on the man, and once he's done, well, you can't go back to your family because now you're like, damaged goods.
Oh my God.
What are you gonna do? You don't have enough education. You can't get a job. You can't like go live by your.
I need to know the name of this movie. Are these women from all strata of class, or is it just the poor?
No, I think it's just like a thing in their communities. Now, it could be a specific thing within the Bengali communities, but I certainly didn't see that there was some differentiation. They're rich or poor. It was just like, hey, if this happens to you, you are moved off.
So this thing of shaming the woman, it is so many different levels. And you said, Vineeta, that men have created it, but females enforce it too.
Yes.
And I've seen it so much in my life. When I went to Pakistan one time, and I remember we were in the shopping center, and I always try to wear, when we would go to Pakistan, my parents would tell us to cover our heads and wear shalwar kameez. And so I'm wearing shalwar kameez. I have my head covered, and we are in the shopping place, and this guy, and I was like 16, or I think, or I don't remember, this guy touches my breast, right? And he touched my breast, and my brother saw it. My brother turned around, my brother saw it, and my brother hit him. And my mom turned around and looked at me with like, what did you do? And I felt like, is that my fault? Did I make that happen? And I'm fully covered. Like, I'm not even wearing anything revealing, or like, for him to come and touch me like that. But is it my fault that a person touched me? Like, why am I feeling shamed for that? I didn't say anything, no, but I felt like maybe was it my fault? I'm thinking that, did I do something wrong here? Like, what did I do?
You do know now that wasn't your fault.
Yes, now I do.
Okay,
know
good.
that.
Good.
Yes.
Sometimes I meet people and they're like, oh, really? Like they haven't gotten to that point.
I
so
know.
I'm glad that I'm glad your brother hit him though.
Yeah. But then it was like my fault for creating a scene. Somehow I was the main culprit of it and made it happen.
I love that your brother punched him, because this is one of the biggest things. Again, only from my perspective here in the United States, we are talking about this a little bit more. I think that the men who say, well, but I'm not a rapist, I don't molest women, I don't do any of that, why am I being lumped in with all these other monsters? It's like, because you didn't do anything. You just stood there. You didn't stand up for that woman. You didn't stand up for your sister. You didn't stand up for your wife. You didn't stand up for your mother, or whoever it is. It doesn't matter. You didn't stand up. You stood by. And I was thinking when we were talking about, like, why is this? Why do we blame the victim? And all I could think about was in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in Genesis, because so I was raised Catholic. I get really hot under the collar about this, because I'm like, read it. And it totally blames Eve for taking that apple, And it's like, where was Adam? In there, it says she turns and gives the apple to her husband who was with her. What was Adam fucking doing? Nothing. He didn't like step forward and be like, hey, this snake is talking. Like, I don't know, maybe that was a thing. I don't know. But, he didn't step in and say, we're not supposed to do that. No, he did nothing. He was standing fucking right there. And that was his biggest sin, doing nothing. And I'm like, that's why we're pissed. And we're not saying that you are also potentially a rapist or whatever it is. We're saying be a man, do something. Why am I the one that's being made to be the bitch when my mama bear instincts come out? And I'm like, you're going out of here on a stretcher, dude. You don't touch any of my friends' kids. You don't touch my friends, nothing like. And the guys are just like, what?
I just want to bring in the word jerk, and I think it started way back then.
With Adam and Eve.
Oh my goodness, this is not men bashing at all. This is behavior bashing. So if the same behavior happened by women to women, because there are lots of times women don't stand up for each other. Women, I think, are even worse to each other. I have more men allies than I have women allies. I just want to call a spade, which is the behavior is totally unacceptable, whether I do it or someone else does it. My problem is, why do only some people get called out and not everyone? It's either power, it's either status, it's either gender. Why is it that not everyone gets called out on it? That's my spill the chai moment right now.
I wonder if part of it is, how in a situation, like you hear this all the time, somebody, it is usually a woman though, like on a subway or something, she gets touched, she gets harassed. Nobody stands up and says anything. However, if one person stands up and says, hey, back off, or hey, are you okay? Then you might have 5 others stand up, but they're not going to stand up until one person does it. It's very odd human behavior, but it's been studied.
Because it's like, who's going to go first? And I want to pull this back to, and I know that Michelle, you have a very different perspective because you're talking more about here, but like when Sana was sharing her story, like, I'll be honest, I don't think that there's one, and I can say this quite confidently, there's not one Indian or Pakistani female that has not experienced something that has happened of this nature from both people that they know and that they don't know. Like to the point where I remember when I was in India and we would just visit like, once every couple of years, even when I'm walking on the street, imagine that I have to be so alert and aware. I am watching everybody because every man, not every man, a lot of men in that crowd are just waiting for any opportunity to touch you, any opportunity. Now let's back up for a second, because this has been created in the environment where men are kind of like in this place of like, we're separated and you can't kind of socialize the way you want to. So there's all these like feelings, like all they watch is these movies, right? These Bollywood fantasy movies, and they have all of this unexpressed desires and things, right? And it comes out, it takes shape in these really kind of like slimy and icky ways, right? Like just, oh, can I just like touch her arm somehow? Can I just touch her butt somehow and get away with it? Now the problem is because the women are very much like just don't create a situation, okay? And you know what? You probably did something for him to like touch you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it comes back to this thing, which is another reason why if something does happen, and I have seen a lot, I have personally been a part of it where I have been touched or whatever. The difference is I see them like the women, like it's happening, I'm watching it, and they'll just pretend like it didn't happen, right? So what happens is then the guy gets bolder, right? It's like, whoa, if I could get away with this, what else can I do, right? So my personal experience is when I'm even walking, I'm watching, and I will literally rotate my body and walk sideways so I don't have to encounter. Like, could you imagine like having to have that level of consciousness? Or you're walking and they're catcalls. That's common culture.
Yes.
That is common culture. Okay. I'm just giving you some context here, Michelle.
I have friends in Bombay and they're like, oh, come visit. And I'm like, I've heard too many stories about gang rape. And I'm like, I don't want to go. I'm sorry. I don't want to go because I won't be allowed to bring my accoutrement from the US where it's legal. How am I going to protect myself? I'm like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. And it's interesting because I'm wondering if this is a worldwide thing, that no matter what culture you're from as a woman, because I know here it was definitely the case. Shh, don't cause a scene. I grew up that way too. Like, don't cause a scene. You're supposed to be a good girl.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be ladylike, and ladies don't scream and shout and make a scene.
Yeah. But it's so interesting, right? Because for me, I was the one that spoke up. So when it happened to me, you best believe I was making sure everybody knew. So first of all, public transportation. I used to take the bus when I was in school in New Delhi. Oh my goodness, that is a whole other adventure because it is crowded. Every hand, every part, like, listen, it is all like a free form game in there, right? So you know that there's tons of women that are experiencing unbelievable things there and they are not saying a word. So of course, here's me getting on the bus and someone touches me and I'm like, did you just touch me? Did you just touch me? And you should have seen this guy because he's probably done it many times. I don't even think he knew how to process what I was saying. And suddenly everyone's looking and he didn't even know what to do. He just literally just jumped off the bus.
It was so unexpected. He didn't expect you to do anything.
Right.
I've been in those situations where I didn't do anything too. I have many times been in those situations.
But I'm just saying, right? Like, we're all different when we have our circumstances, but that was just me.
How old were you, by the way, when that happened?
In that incident, I was probably like 16, but I was younger and I've had many other experiences. When we were traveling in India to other places, we would take the train, right? And sometimes it was sleeper train, but they're not like the glamorous crab-ins or you have your own space. It's just like you got a curtain, you got your boots, your family's together, blah, blah, blah. Like, I remember like waking up and there were hands on my boobs as I'm sleeping. And I'm like, is this really happening? And I'm looking, there's a guy sitting on the seat or like literally where I can't remember, maybe my dad was sleeping. And he's sitting there with his hands like this because I was on the upper bunk. I'm like, are you kidding me? Oh, you know, I made a stink, right? I'm like, what are you doing? So I just start yelling. Oh my goodness. I mean, of course the dude like is gone in a second, but think about what is going on, that this is like acceptable. Now I made a sound. I don't know if everybody does that, right? So can you even imagine the degree like of things that are going on? But even though you know it's not your fault, what are you kidding me? I didn't invite anything. I'm freaking sleeping.
And everybody has a different trauma response. Mine is generally to freeze. So a lot of people just freeze and their voice never comes out because it can't. And that is okay. Like that is one of the normal trauma responses, you know? And so like, I never, when I'm speaking to other women, I always hold space. It is never your fault. And neither is your trauma response. This is just how your brain has evolved to protect you. And yeah, but I'm so glad that you did that and that you shouted, because look what happened. He ran away.
I'm not the norm. So
you're not the norm.
In India, you said that because there's feelings that come up because they're separated.
Meaning that the way that we socialize here, boys and girls play and have fun, there are a lot of restrictions in our cultures. Like, you know, go play with the girls and your dolls. You don't have to go play with the boys and their sports stuff and whatever. There's a lot of separation and a lot of like information that doesn't get shared. So we don't know how to really even interact with, you know, male, female. It's not set up in a way that it's healthy and normal. So that's a big part of the background.
I think that these are such important topics. In season 2, we want to spill the chai on all this and more.
In season 1, I was still a little bit scared of actually talking about those controversial things. And now I'm at a point where I just really see and I feel that we need to talk about it. We need to say it, like things like this. And that my experience that I shared, I've never said this out loud at all to anyone my entire life, because I felt like maybe it was my fault, but I want to say these things now, and I'm ready to talk about those controversial issues. And that's what Rabia and I were saying. We're gonna do it in season 2. We're gonna talk about these things, and we're gonna go there, and we don't care if we're gonna hurt some people's feelings, or we're gonna, you know, it needs to happen. And I'm so looking forward to it. And I'm so glad that I met Rabia and that we came together to do this. And thank you for this today, ladies. This was awesome.
I feel so honored, so grateful, so blessed that we can make this difference together. So what a great episode that was with Michelle, Vineeta, Huseyin. We had, you know, great company we were in that day.
It was beautiful. I loved spilling all the chai and cleaning it up too.
Yep.
So.
But it's that time of our show again, Sana. We're two desi girls
Reinventing cultural norms
with love.
with love. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thanks a lot.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Please rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow the Rabia and Sana Show on social medias.
Remember, you can watch the video version on YouTube, and don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.
If you want life coaching services, or you are reinventing cultural norms for yourself and think you would be a great guest and want to be on our show, please email contact@therabiaandsanashow.com.
And be sure to check out our next episode. See you next time.
See you next time.